Hello and welcome to the Audio Epics podcast. This is Domien, and I'm so happy to be able to introduce to you today the second episode of The Beast of the Western Wilds. I have to say, it's great to be back with a new story. We've been amazed by all the positive feedback that we've received already on the first episode, and we're very grateful for that because it really motivates us to keep working on this stuff and making more of these audio dramas and audiobooks. Even though it's, not always that easy to keep working on it when you've got a small child crawling around through the living room, and at the same time you're trying to run a small business. But who cares? It's wonderful. Speaking of our small child, little Ronan is already being trained by us, made ready to become a voice actor of himself. In fact, you might hear him at some point in The Beast of the Western Wilds in one of the future episodes. I'm not gonna say any more than that. So far, though, he only knows one word, and he keeps repeating it, and that word is puss. I don't know. Puss, like cat in Dutch. That's the one word he keeps saying. So maybe we should make a story about a cat at some point. And then we can make him the narrator, who knows. Anyway, before we dive into it, just a few more pointers that I want to give about The Beast of the Western Wilds. For one, some people might wonder, is this a sequel or a prequel, or, do you need to have listened to the original Witch Hunter dramatized audiobook? And the answer is, it's a prequel, and you don't have to listen to the original Witch Hunter audiobook. All you have to know is that Ludlov is a witch hunter, and it takes place in a fictional fantasy world where Seven Peaks is a great city, and the people worship a goddess. And that's about really everything you really need to know to be able to follow the story. Secondly, I think it's nice to point out how long the story will be. There will be 8 episodes of The Beast of the Western Wilds. Some will be longer than others, but we've actually decided to make some episodes longer by combining 2 chapters in one episode, either because they really belong together as a unified whole, or because one chapter is really too short to make it a standalone episode. And we've already decided which chapters we're gonna lump together, and that really brings the final count on 8 episodes. And the story itself is about 5 hours long, I think. And finally, there is a small warning that I have to give before we go on, that in some of the later episodes of The Beast, there will definitely be some more mature material. At the very least, as a parent, I would listen to it first myself, and then decide whether this is something, that your teenage children can listen to. Anyway, that's really all I have to say, and I'm ready now to stop talking and introduce to you the second episode of The Beast of the Western Wilds, a Witch Hunter Tale. Beyond the Stone Gate. The sun was up and the village lay behind them. Ludlov noticed Rudolph's uncommon silence during the ride, but didn't comment on it. The lad must have been truly offended by what the woman had been implying. It surprised Ludlov a bit that he was so taken aback by it.
How long has it been since you've seen your cousin, Rudolph?
About a year and a half, maybe.
How did he come to be stationed in Schnertwald?
He was born there. He asked special permission to be stationed in his hometown.
Really? Did he miss his family that much?
Well...
Rudolph shrugged with a mysterious little smile.
Ah, now I get it. There's a girl involved.
Rudolph laughed, exposing his strangely crooked teeth. Ludlov didn't comment any further on the matter, and Rudolph seemed pleased about that. His plain face lit up by the early spring sun, the young guardsman breathed in and heaved a contented sigh.
Rudolph, I saw your amulet last night.
beautiful thing, isn't it, Master? It's my lucky charm.
Ludlov raised his eyebrows.
A lucky charm? Rudolph, do you have any idea?
He decided to start over.
How did you come by this?
Rudolph simply shrugged.
I got it from Adolphus when I left for Seven Peaks. I don't know where he got it from. I've been wearing it every day since then. Brings me luck.
He smiled innocently, then spurred on his horse. After 2 hours, they arrived in Schnertwald. They rode through an ancient, ivy-covered stone archway that led to the gravelly main road along which the buildings of the town were arrayed. The archway extended on both sides into the beginnings of a wall, but either these were the remnants of a building that had been ruined centuries ago, or it had never been completed, for now the archway stood alone. The buildings themselves were modest timberwork, some half hidden in the surrounding oak trees. This village wasn't merely on the edge of the forest, it was almost halfway part of it. It was nearly noon, and the sun shone brightly through the branches of the trees, illuminating the tender leaves in a myriad of green hues. Ludlov searched in vain for a stable in the seemingly abandoned street. In the end, he dismounted amidst the trees near the last house of the village, and tied the reins of his horse to a branch. Rudolph followed his example. Twigs cracked underneath Ludlov's boots as he ambled along the gravel road. Despite the playful sounds of nearby jackdaws fluttering round the chimneys of a house, it was uncannily quiet.
Well, where might your cousin be this time of day?
Rudolph shrugged and scratched the back of his neck. The witch hunter investigated his bashful eyes.
Right. To the inn it is, then.
The inn was called Beyond the Stone Gate, a rather grandiose name for the large but simple wooden building that it was. As soon as they had opened the door, the smell of roasted venison and mushroom sauce awakened their appetites. The walls were almost entirely covered with the stuffed heads of deer, boars, foxes, and even a cow. Ludlov had to wonder what kind of hunter had scored that one. A large, snarling wolf was mounted in its entirety on the massive wooden mantelpiece sticking out above the fire behind the counter. It was surprisingly crowded, and despite the absence of any music or singing, an atmosphere of busy enthusiasm hung in the air. At a table near the counter, 3 men in studded leather doublets were enjoying a pint and regularly looking over their shoulders, either inspecting the pretty waitress or simply eagerly awaiting their lunch. Rudolph waved at them, and the youngest of the 3 got up and smiled broadly, opening his arms wide.
Rudy!
Adolphus!
Rudolph quickly made his way to the table and embraced his cousin.
Hey!
Where you been?
Good to see
Rudy.
you.
They were patting each other on the back as Ludlov casually walked over.
Gentlemen.
They all looked at him like they were expecting to be handed out a punishment. But then they relaxed when Ludlov smiled and tipped his hat.
A fine day for a good meal. My name is Ludlov.
Adolphus was a good-looking young chap with unruly blonde hair. He was still standing next to his cousin, but his broad smile had narrowed somewhat.
We were informed you might be showing up, Master Ludlov.
Adolphus, I presume?
Yes, Master.
Rudolph told me about you. He was clearly looking forward to meeting you.
Were you? Not enough decent drinking buddies in Seven Peaks, then?
The city's big and noisy. Nothing like home.
I thought you weren't from Schnertwald, Rudolph.
I'm not. I'm from Braunfeld, not too far from here. Adolphus is a real Schnertwalder, though.
Born and bred.
The eldest of the 3 guards was a barrel-chested man with very short grey hair and a broken nose. He was so wide, he hadn't quite managed to close his doublet, so his white shirt was visible between its laces. He gestured welcomingly with arms as thick as tree trunks.
Come, sit with us, Master Ludlov.
Ludlov shook his head.
Thank you for your offer, but I'm going to familiarize myself with the town a bit.
Then he turned to Rudolph.
You catch up with your cousin. We'll see each other here again tonight.
Rudolph was both happy and surprised.
Yes, Master Ludlov.
Don't have too many drinks. We may have serious and dangerous work ahead of us, and I'll be needing you sober for that.
In truth, Ludlov wanted to look around on his own for a bit, without the burden of Rudolf following him everywhere. It was a modest village, but it didn't look poor or untended. In fact, it was a rather pleasant place. There certainly was no sense of the kind of darkness that the woman of the farm had been hinting at. This didn't surprise him. People were naturally suspicious. The evil reputation of the forest was undoubtedly enough to spark equally grotesque tales about the quaint little place next to it. There was only one building fully constructed out of stone. It stood towering over the others in the middle of the town, its walls built with finely hewn bricks. Ludlov recognized that stone from the archway at the entrance of Schnertwald. He didn't doubt for a moment that this was the town hall. Some steps led up to the double doors. There was a bell, but Ludlov preferred to use the pewter knocker. No one came to open the door, but he noticed it stood ajar and couldn't resist walking in. The interior of the house was tasteful but not overly luxurious. There was a subtle countryside feel to the way it had been decorated. To his right, an open door led to a beautifully furnished office room. He stepped inside, but the room was quiet and empty. A portrait of a wealthy couple hung on the wall behind the desk. The lavishly whiskered gentleman in the painting was petting a slender greyhound.
The Count Rufus of Edelhart, and the Countess Ingalil, his wife. I don't know why these portraits are still there. They haven't ruled these parts for well over a century, and they were hated by the people.
The witch hunter turned and saw a slender man of about 50 years old, with gentle, refined features. His splendid maroon brass-buttoned jerkin betrayed his high status, although the shirt he wore underneath had its sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and the sweat on the man's brow showed he had been working. This was clearly a gentleman of noble bearing who was not afraid to get his hands dirty. Ludlov took an almost immediate liking to him.
Forgive me for my intrusion, sir.
No matter. You must be the witch hunter from Seven Peaks, right?
Ludlov took off his hat and gave a stiff little bow.
Ludlov.
The man shook his hand.
Albrecht Schmetterling. I am both mayor and doctor to this little town. I know why you are here, Master Ludlov. My guards have told me all about it.
Well, to be honest, Doctor, I don't know all that much myself. But based on what I've heard, and that was from an impressionable young man, I have to admit, it seems like your town has been visited by a werewolf.
I can't confirm that, I must admit. But perhaps I can show you something of interest. If you will please follow me.
Then he darted out of the room. Ludlov followed the doctor through the hallway into a clean kitchen. The man then disappeared into a doorway that opened up to some dark steps. Following the mayor down those steps, Ludlov arrived in a spacious cellar, supported by heavy pillars. It was built out of dark bricks, but a large round window in the elevated ceiling welcomed a wide shaft of sunlight into the center of the room. There, on a massive wooden table, surrounded by magnifying glasses, books, and strange utensils, lay an utterly bizarre corpse. Dr. Schmetterling cast a curious smile at Ludlov, like he was eager to find out what the witch hunter would make of this creature. The thing was surprisingly small, about the size of a shepherd dog. Its black, emaciated body had been sliced in half around the midriff, but otherwise the corpse was intact. Its overly large head looked somewhat like that of a bat, with huge eyes and ears. Ludlov noticed patches of bristly red fur growing haphazardly all over the creature's skin. And strangest of all, it had such long and thin limbs that it seemed almost impossible that it had been capable of moving around on them. All 4 of its limbs ended in 5 sharp, twisted claws. Ludlov bended over and investigated the eyes. Big, black orbs. Without hesitation, he took the creature's head and turned one of its eyes directly towards the window. he could see the light of the sun reflected back in a blood-red hue.
It is supernatural, but this is no werewolf, nor anything like it.
The witch hunter crossed his arms.
How did you catch it?
It was one of our guards, Adolphus, who sliced the creature in half. It had crawled through the window of the widow Elsenbach.
Does this woman have any small children in her house?
The doctor nodded.
A baby, barely a month old.
Ludlov's sigh was bitter.
My guess is that it was after the infant then. And Adolphus was there in time to kill the creature?
Schmetterling's expression told Ludlov enough.
Well, well. Adolphus must be quite the hero of the town then.
The doctor didn't answer. Ludlov admired the man's discretion, but he guessed there was another side to the story.
And what do you think this creature is, witch hunter?
Ludlov took another long look at the monstrous corpse.
This is not something that could survive in the wilds. It was created by some foul magic. There are practitioners of dark rituals who create familiars to carry out certain tasks. I've encountered such baby snatchers before, Dr. Schmetterling. It is good that you summoned me, even if it was under false pretenses.
Dr. Schmetterling raised his eyebrows.
False pretenses?
I was told there was a huge black beast seen roaming these parts. There was no need to exaggerate. This here is troubling enough.
Actually, that beast was seen, Master Ludlov. Also, it is claimed. And that is also why we have summoned you. This creature here was found and killed only last night.
Ludlov felt a bit stupid. He should have noticed that the corpse was still quite fresh.
Right. Who saw the large beast then?
Several people have seen it, and I believe the widow Elsenbach was one of them.
Thank you, Dr. Schmetterling. You've certainly given me enough material to start my investigation.
Albrecht, please.
Albrecht.
The villagers had pointed out to Ludlov where the widow lived. It was one of the unremarkable houses already cozily nestled between the trees of the forest. When he knocked on the door, he was surprised to see a familiar face opening it. It was the eldest of the 3 guards he had met in the inn. The muscular one.
Ah, witch hunter. Doing your rounds?
Are you Master Elsenbach?
Dietrich Elsenbach is my name. Captain of the guard.
Ludlov looked around. It was a small house where everything seemed to be made of wood. The heavy furniture was sparse and crudely built, except for a beautiful cradle near the window that was being rocked by a very pretty young woman. She seemed to be about 19 or 20 years old. The early spring sun shining through the window brought a fiery hue to the exceedingly long copper-blonde braid that hung draped over her shoulder. Her appearance reminded Ludlov of a character from an old fairy tale.
Nikki, we have a visitor.
She started to get up, but Ludlov held out his hand.
Please. No need, Mistress Elsenbach.
She smiled, but her large hazel eyes betrayed an inner sadness.
Can we offer you a drink, witch hunter?
No, thank you. And please, call me Ludlov.
In truth, he had preferred Master Ludlov, but anything was better than just being called witch hunter. He walked over to the cradle. The baby inside was asleep.
Mistress Elsenbach, may I ask you some questions?
Of course.
Ludlov turned to the captain with an expectant gaze. The captain understood and left the house through the back door. Ludlov could see him through the window, making ready to chop some firewood. He smiled at the girl.
Captain Elsenbach is your father, I presume?
Mm-hmm. He moved in after my husband died. He's been very kind.
Who was your husband?
She cast a sad and loving glance at the baby in the cradle.
Caspar was no soldier like my father. He was a tradesman. A peddler, really. He became ill on the road. Word had only just reached him that his father had been brutally murdered.
Ludlov's interest was piqued. Murdered? How?
I dare not say, Master Witch Hunt. Caspar wanted to look into it, but I think he was afraid of what he would learn. All we learned was that the poor man was savagely maimed in some kind of attack. It might have been bandits or a wild animal.
Or an unnatural beast, Ludlov thought quietly. Is there anything you do know about Caspar's father?
His name was Alfred. He was a farmer who lived not too far from here. Caspar hadn't spoken to him in years, so the whole thing troubled him very deeply. He didn't talk about it much, but I knew it never left his mind. I think he felt guilty because they never managed to bury the hatchet before Alfred's death. I can't imagine what that must have been like. At least Caspar managed to get home before he died. I thank the goddess that I got the chance to say goodbye to him. And then he got the chance to see our little boy.
The grief in her voice was still so palpable, it broke Ludlov's heart. He had seen many things in the world, both great and terrible, but the stoic courage of ordinary folk in the face of great adversity still moved him the most. What did you name the child?
Frederick.
It was a good, thoughtec name. Dr. Schmetterling, the mayor. He told me you witnessed a beast earlier.
Before the thing that tried to snatch dear little Frederick, you mean?
Yes. I want to learn about this other beast first.
Well, it was not long before Caspar returned home. I had a huge belly back then, so I didn't move about too much. But I had come from the chapel one evening on petitioning day. I had been praying for Caspar's return. And it was right here outside where my father's chopping wood now. I was about to enter when I felt a kind of prickling in the back of my neck. I turned and I saw nothing, but I knew something was there. Do you understand?
Ludlov did understand. The feeling was well known to him. What happened next? She looked around nervously, like she was afraid to talk about it. Ludlov waited patiently.
Well, then I heard something. It was a voice. A perfectly clear voice, mind you. Not some monstrous rasp. It was a woman. She sounded young.
That was not what Ludlov had expected to hear. What did the voice say?
She called me by my name, which frightened me to no end. How could she know me? And then she told me. Her exact words were, "Give him up."
Do you know what she meant?
I just felt it in my heart. She wanted Frederick.
That was what Ludlov had feared.
I couldn't speak out loud. I just whispered, "You'll never have him. Never."
You were brave. Did you see anything? She dried her face with her hands.
Yes, that's when I saw something. Not the woman I had heard, but the beasts. First, I just saw eyes. They were big and green, and light came from them.
Green? That didn't sound like any werewolf he had encountered before.
With a black slit in the center, like a cat's eyes. But no cat has eyes so devilish. And then it moved, and I saw long, thin spikes running along its back. and there was black shaggy fur, and that's all.
The description sounded utterly strange to Ludlov, despite his years of experience with all kinds of creatures. Did anyone else see this creature, Mistress Elzenbach?
It's Nicky.
Nicky?
Not that night, but other people have mentioned similar things. I didn't talk about it at first because...
You thought no one would believe you?
It's not that. Well, it is, but... Mistress Winkler. I didn't want people to think I was like her.
Who is Mistress Winkler? And why don't you want that?
If you had met her, you would know why.
Maybe I should. Nicky shrugged.
Anyway, I told my father, who told Adolphus, and then Adolphus said his cousin was a guard in Seven Peaks and he could get in touch with the Witch Hunter Order and, well, here you are.
Ludlov nodded and looked outside of the window. Captain Elzenbach was still busy chopping wood. Ludlov contemplated his next question carefully. Nicky, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be forward with me. She looked at him innocently. Are you and Adolphus involved?
Heavens, no. Adolphus is a fine man, but I'm still mourning for Casper. Why? Are the town gossips at it again?
Not as far as I know. I apologize. I just made the connection since Dr. Schmetterling mentioned that Adolphus was here to kill the second creature late at night.
As was my father. They were having drinks and playing cards. Truth be told, I was about to send Adolphus home, because their laughter was keeping the baby up.
The door opened and Captain Elzenbach entered. Ludlov stood up. Was the baby in his cradle, right here, when the creature came?
No, the little one was upstairs.
Could you show me the upstairs room where the creature entered? The captain gestured with his head to a rickety wooden stairway at the other end of the room.
There is only one room upstairs and only one window. Just go and see.
Ludlov went up the stairs. It was a simple attic that had been turned into a bedchamber. There was a double bed in the middle of the room and a modest cot in the back. A large beam ran along the thatched roof. Towards the end, near the window, a baby bed hung suspended from 4 pieces of rope tied together to the beam. Ludlov walked over to the window. It was open. Upon closer examination, the frame was damaged to the extent that he could no longer close it. When he came back down, he eyed the captain and his daughter gravely. Little Frederick is not safe here. Captain Elzenbach put his arm around Nicky, who looked terrified.
Why? The creature is dead now, isn't it?
One creature is, but I suspect that one was but a minion of some greater evil. Most likely the apparition Nicky saw earlier is also involved. The muscular captain suddenly looked very weak and uncertain, but Nicky nodded in agreement with Ludlov. Is there a barrack for the guards here? The captain shrugged.
There is, but it's more of a storage place. All of the guards sleep in their own homes. Besides, it's not exactly well fortified.
Ludlov scratched his cheek for a moment, lost in thought. Then he snapped his fingers. The town hall, the only stone building. You'll be safe there. I'll inform Dr. Schmetterling.
Do you really want us to move there?
For now, yes. Trust me, they will be back.
So that was episode 2 of The Beast of the Western Wilds, and I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with episode 3. In the meantime, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
And from Ronan as well.